All right, the last thing I did, I cut it. I'm gonna file it. I like a metal file. Other files do work though. Like I've seen people even use a nail file at home, you know. But this right here, this lasts years. And again, from Home Depot. I like to shop there because I'm deep down, I'm a builder. So I do all of this from that way, not just looking at it as creating art or jewelry. I use the mindset that always, if I'm building a table, everything has to make sense and last and done strongly and with intentions. Focus. So I'm just filing around the sides. That's all you do. And you want to do that because if you don't, the copper's going to scratch people. And always go like that and feel it, make sure everything feels smooth. So there is a rounded tip of an S hook. Alright, so I'm going to show you another thing to do to connect to the other side. You could make a simple circle if you want to, the way this is in here. So at the other end of my necklace, I can have, there's a closed one. Pretend this is closed. I can have, here's the other end of my necklace, I can have another one of these closed and hook into it that way to open and close the necklace. Sometimes I want to go a little bit fancier or just, you know, have a piece look more interesting than that. So again, you want to use the same gauge. I do just for uniformity. Same gauge that I used for the hook, I'm going to do it again. Again, flat edge. It's okay. So pretend this side I've now hooked into the other side of my necklace, and I can go ahead and close that. And I close it by pushing down. I didn't do anything else like that. Then I come up here. I'm going to just push my wire. I'm going to rotate so I can still see what I'm doing. That's it. And then you want to make your cut instead of cutting there like I did for the hook. I'm going to cut here instead so that I can close it. And if you notice the way I'm looking at it, I'm looking down at it to make sure everything's perpendicular. Wire's going that way, pliers are making a perfect cross. There's no slanting, you know, just don't do that. Keep everything straight. It's flying sometimes. Around those wires, you want to bend this a little bit, like that. Now you don't fight with it anymore with those, trying to get it closed or straight. I bent it a little bit in the process, so I'm using these to straighten it. I want everything lined up. And we see that everything is lined up. There's nothing tilted, you know. Okay, so now that I have it like that, I'm going to take my flat nose, chain nose pliers, whatever you want to call them, and you just squeeze. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side, just to make it a little bit more equal. And I'll just give it a nice little squeeze overall, this is just straightening it. That's just straightening it. If I press down on it with the whole thing in there, everything flat, just keeps it straight. So that's how you get a little figure 8 type of hook, which looks more interesting than just a circle on the end sometimes, depending on the piece. And so this is connected to the end, this is connected to the other end, and they come together like so. So that's how you do that. To make smaller loops than the diameter of this, which is 6 millimeters, and your circle is always going to be a tiny bit bigger, like maybe 1 millimeter larger or so, than whatever you wrap around it, wrapping it around. So if I want to make smaller circles, I want a wire that's a little bit thinner than this, because the smaller the circle, the more firm that loop will be. So just looking here at my scraps, I've grabbed something that's this is like 18 gauge. 18 gauge, 16 gauge would be fine too. This is good if you want to make a connector to go on the end of something dainty like a waist bead. Waist beads have much smaller beads. So you wouldn't want something this big, you know, connected to it. So when I use my chain nose pliers, they sell pliers that have straight, you know, you don't need to buy 2 pairs of pliers. You just simply hold it in a way to where you can keep going. So if I want to keep it here, I'm gonna wrap. I'm gonna bring my wire above in this direction towards me, and I can just keep going. Closing that. Okay. So I want to keep them here. I can just keep going. I'm doing this. That's all I'm doing. And I'm just keeping the wire in the same, meaning this. I'm keeping this in the same spot and letting it build forward that way. You have people on YouTube saying you have to buy those pliers that have like 2, and they have these different sizes and these different layers to it. It's just, it's not, it's just extra overboard. And then to save a little tiny bit, get the most out of my little copper investment, I just squeeze that down. That's it. That's it. Same thing. Just go in there, snip, snip, snip all the way up. And that's how you get smaller circles. Don't mind my dry hands.
Okay, wait,
so that's the difference. And you're going to close this the same way. But being that this is a smaller gauge, it's easier. You don't need 2 pliers to do that. Just put the whole thing in your flat pliers, your chain nose pliers, and just squeeze it. So now those 2 sides that were a little caticorn are now lined up. They're lined up, and just squeeze the side that's up. Just squeeze it down with precision. Don't just squeeze to squeeze, and then you're gonna squeeze too hard and push it down into the circle. So that's our cute little circles for smaller projects. And then I'm gonna show you an interesting way to turn your little scraps that are like it's like 4 inches long. You take your tip, leave about a centimeter sticking out, and I'm just going around. Came out of my pliers so I can go back around. The goal is to always have one going opposite ways, and then the long one you bend away from the circle. I'm not saying up or down, because if I was holding it this way, then I would have pushed it down. It goes away from the circle. So the goal is to create this stem with a double loop at the top. Okay. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to hold this with my left hand like this. Never like this. It moves around too much. Hold it like that, so that I can take my dominant hand and bring this little tip around underneath my circle. So the little bit that's left, I'm just squeezing it in place by switching the side that my hand is on. I'm not going to reach and do none of that. A little squeeze there to just close my spiral. They're closed.
sometimes
they're closed. There's no spiraling like a candy cane. It's closed like a slinky. That's what you want. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold it, the tip of my pliers, just like that. Not up here. Just like this. I'm going to make a right angle that is lined up with the circle that I made. I'm holding the pliers here because my goal is to make a loop up there. So if you know you want your loop to go up that way, it makes no sense to hold it here and then say, so do I pull down? You don't pull down to make a circle that goes up. And I have people ask me that all the time. Know where you want to go and just go. You know, it's... So I wanted my circle to go up, so I looped up. If I was holding it down, if I was holding it this way, then that means that my circle faces down and I would have had to curve down. That's easy to see. So I'm going to do the same thing that I just did. Come out this way. I want a right angle coming up from the middle of that. The purpose of that is so that this looks like a perfectly centered circle on top of a stem and not look like a number 9. That's what you get if you don't do that right angle. You can do the right angle before or after. To do it before, you would make your angle first and you come around like so, but you need to have a longer stem so you can go around twice. I don't like having to account for that, you know, measure that beforehand, so I just make my 2 loops and then I make my right angle below it. So again, with your dominant hand, you want to use your dominant hand for the part where you're bringing the little tail underneath to form a solid base beneath your loop. And as you're doing these videos, watching these videos, let's see where it landed. I highly suggest that you watch it first, because it makes a lot more sense to know where you want to go instead of just wanting a step-by-step. You know, it's like the difference of using a map and GPS. You want to see everything and know where you're going, or do you want someone to just say left, right, and not even know if you're facing east or north or south? I don't know where that piece fell, but I have more. I use this one. And then after watching the video, then do it along, because you should have a sense of knowing where it is you want to go. It's smarter to approach things that way. So this is the loop that I was making for the second one. You attach it through, remember when I went like that, for the other end of this one, like so. Same thing, I'm going to do exactly what I did before, where I held it down like that, and I went around. Remember when I went around, I did that? Well, this time I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm filling in this entire gap. This actually makes beautiful bracelets, chains. This is a really nice way of making your own chain that's very unique to the factory-made type of things. And then that little piece, sorry, I don't think to explain all of this stuff. The little piece that's left, you obviously want to tuck it in. So I didn't say that, but you just want to tuck it in. The best way to tuck it in is to curve the tip first, and then when you press, it'll already fit with the flow. And there's nothing, you don't want to just do that with a straight piece, because it won't be going with the curve, and that straightness will allow things to get hooked onto it, like hair or clothing. So you can repeat this process, and when you repeat this process, you actually can create a really beautiful piece off of just your little leftovers. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to fly through 2 more links without any explanation. because it is the same things being repeated. I don't like going around more than 2 times really, especially if it's going to be for a bracelet. Straightening it a little bit. That gap in there, I don't want that gap. Let's squeeze it. Just press it down. Just bring those coils down. If you do that, that was a little mistake, and that's a mistake that can be easily corrected. See how that's coming along? See how pretty that is? And be creative and stick a bead on there and do the same thing. Wrap, move, go around, that's it. Repeating the same things over and over. Sorry, moving my hands too fast, messing up the focus. Try to move slow. The one for the shop is not there. There's supposed to be one there. Mine is missing. Like the one for the shop is missing. It's broken at the bottom. This probably, yeah. These also can be used the same way that I made this with a thicker gauge. If you want to create an attachment of something that's much finer and you don't want such thick copper, instead of doing this, because this copper is very thick, so once I close that, that's not going anywhere. Like that's not going to open. You would have to use tools to open this. If this got pulled on, it would not open. But if I did the same thing with this gauge of metal, that would definitely open. If a person got hooked onto something, that would open. But however, these cannot open because the loop is sealed by it going around itself so many times. This can't bend open. So this is also a way to make an end connector piece with a thinner gauge that can never just pull open. And then you can also, you know, connect them multiple times and create a bracelet, a necklace, you know, what have you, an anklet, a waist bead, you know. It's just very time consuming, and if you have the time, I say go for it. It's a way of turning all these little scraps into beautiful pieces. I think I covered all of the connector pieces, hooks, C rings or O-rings, little connectors, as well as using a thinner wire to obtain the same thing, but you can do it in a really pretty way.